Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with another Total War Warhammer 2 community cast. Now before we kick off this bit of a vampire count on Norsca action, I do hope all of you guys had a wonderful new year. Hope you had wonderful holidays, got to spend a great time with family and friends. Hope everyone had a good time, and I know I certainly did. And going to be looking to hopefully be doing a more consistent schedule of Total War content in the upcoming days. I have kind of slipped away from that a little bit with the holiday season, with Christmas and the New Year's and all of that, but definitely looking to sort of kick things back into normal gear in the new year. And so this match, community cast, was submitted by Luca, who's running the vampire counts here. It is on the map Tower of Hoeth. He is squaring off against Grumpy Guard and his Norskins. Now, if you guys do enjoy these sort of community casts, if you would like to see your own replay critiqued, broken down, or discussed, feel free to submit them to wyverngamingreplays@gmail.com. I will be leaving the link down in the description below. And without further ado, let's kick things right off, because these are some very, in my opinion at least, interesting builds. Or at least there are a few things here that sort of deviate from the norm. Now, for Luca's build here, for the vampire counts, we can see the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, and that is a pretty standard, I think, choice. The Blood Dragon is a very, very strong combatant. Bonus versus infantry, not necessarily the greatest against Norsca, because realistically, you're probably going to fight a large lord, whether Wolfric on a monster, or horse even, or chariot, or Throg. Those are really the most common picks. Nobody really brings a Marauder Chieftain in my experience, so not necessarily the most useful perk there, but besides that, his combat stats are stellar. He does have a decent amount of HP on his horse here. And of course, he does come with the mighty Helm of Discord, which is really his main selling point. Massive AoE debuff can provide a huge amount of support to his troops. He also does get the heart-piercing ability, which increases his damage output as well as sundering enemy armor. And this synergizes incredibly well with this non-AP force that Luca's brought here, especially the Blood Knights, who normally might struggle even against the not that great armor on, say, Mammoth. It's only got a War Mammoth's only got 70 armor, or Armored Skin Wolves only have 70 armor. But with Armor Sundering, you can knock that down to 40. If your opponent brings Fimir, you can knock that down to 80. So it is a big help potentially, and certainly the Blood Dragon can perform rather well. Now, we're not seeing any of the other perks on him here. We do see 2 spells, Invocation of Neck as well as Raise Dead, and of course the passive, the Curse of Undeath. So going cheap and cheerful with the support abilities here. No additional caster, no secondary caster, no necromancer, which I feel is usually what you see with a Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. But against Norsca, which doesn't tend to have the biggest rear backlines and the biggest cavalry plays, a lot of times you'll see death balls. I do think that you don't necessarily need that extra caster. Now, for the front line, it is simply cheap trash. 5 units of zombies backed up by 4 units of skeleton warriors. Surprisingly, no Graveguard, no Stearnsmen, no units along those lines, which I do think are decent against Norsca. They trade rather well into Berserkers, but certainly we will see skeleton warriors against Marauders, for example, can just bog them down, and they'll do a decent amount of damage just because Norscan troops don't tend to have the best melee defense stats, and they don't tend to have the best armor values. Most of them actually just have trash armor values at 15. So in that situation, the skeleton warriors can actually hold up okay. Now, besides that, we do have 2 units of Blood Knights, 1 on either flank here, providing that strong anti-large punch. They can also overrun backline pretty effectively. They can definitely charge down infantry. They're just a very flexible unit in a way that, for example, the Terrorgeist here is not. They can really deal with any target Norsca throws at you, especially in isolation. Now, up in the sky, we do have the Terrorgeist providing some AP anti-large punch, as well as those breath attacks, and of course Terror, which will help potentially force some of those earlier routes, potentially break some of the Norscan troops before they can really get much done, and it could definitely be a useful unit here. And of course, with its innate regen, you don't have to worry about healing it all the time necessarily, so certainly a powerful unit. Certainly can provide some great support. And of course, poison is nice too. If you're dropping into big fight with your Blood Knights, you got the Helm of Discord going, you got Heart Piercer, and then on top of that, you get poison for the Terrorgeist. It's a wonderful wombo combo that can really wreck enemies. A few strange choices here, though. We do have 2 units of Black Knights with Lances and Barding, and this is a unit I personally see basically, well, never. I do believe they got a slight buff to their stats recently, but to their, I believe it was melee defense. Nothing spectacular. As you can see, their sustained combat stats are absolute garbage, but they are a very, very strong cav on the charge. They have a very strong shock cav. 62 charge bonus, 42 weapon strength, of which 12 is AP, which isn't terrible. I believe Blood Knights actually only have, it might be as low as 13 for Blood Knights. Yeah, Blood Knights only have 13 without their bonus large, so that's actually not terrible for these guys. 100 ton armor is very respectable. Of course, you do have a bronze shield, a high amount of HP for cavalry of over 5,000. especially for a cav that only costs a little over 1,000 gold. That's actually a pretty solid amount of HP when you compare it to, say, Silver Helms or Knights of the Realm or units like that, or Cold Ones for that matter. And so they can definitely do a lot of hurt to Norscan backlines. And finally, we do have some direwolves, and these guys are spread out a little bit, looking to get into the juicy Norscan firing lines here. The 2 Marauder Hunters with javelins, who will certainly be, or could be, a major threat to the Vampire Count force. Now, normally you'd probably be more worried about, say, Mortis engines or units like that, or maybe masked Terrorgeists and Dragons, but we're not seeing that here. Still, even against the 110 armor, these guys with their mighty bonus versus large of, I believe it's 15 off the top of my head. Yeah, bonus versus large of 15. They will do a lot of hurt to something like Black Knights or Blood Knights. Now, besides that, we do have Throg, the Troll King, coming in the center here. He is a very powerful combatant. He's got Frostbite, which can prevent your opponent from running away. Bonus versus large, of course, AP, all that good stuff. Coming in with Fight or Die to keep his troops in the fight. Surprisingly not coming in, and this is surprising me a little bit, is no Wintertooth Crown. A lot of times when I see Throg brought, especially against Vampire Counts, you bring Wintertooth Crown to get that unbreakable, but I assume that in this situation, Grumpy Guard figured it's not worth it, because his army is either high leadership or kind of just throwaway, so perhaps he figured it's not worth. Not entirely sure why. Maybe it's just too expensive, but in my opinion, it is a good spell to bring. Now, besides that, we do have the Fimir Balefiend of Fire, who has brought a decent selection of spells here. He's got the Burning Head, which of course can delete squishy trash very quickly, Cascading Fire Cloak for the defense, Fireball, as well as Kindle Flame, and of course, Arcane Conduit. Now, surprisingly, no Flaming Sword Ruin, and I think this is a bit of a mistake. Now, obviously, in this situation, Luca has not brought any Ethereals. He hasn't brought Hex Wraiths or Cairn Wraiths or Banshees. But if your opponent does bring any of those units, not having magic damage can hurt you quite a bit, especially against Hex Wraiths. So I think that might be a little bit of a mistake there in item choice, but that's just my opinion there. Now, for the front line, it's mostly cheap trash, Marauders, the Icehorn Marauders, Marauder Spearmen. Icehorn Marauders are actually pretty solid in this match because they do have immunity psychology as well as perfect vigor, so they route very, very late usually. They can hold on pretty well. We do, of course, have the firing line of Marauder Hunters, a single giant towering over the rest of the Norscan force, providing its very high leadership, its fear, terror, which is just a very strong anchor unit. And with 600 weapon strength, any unit that Lucas tries to throw into the fight is going to have to be very careful. And the second wave, we do have Marauder Berserkers, as well as a cavalry or pseudo-cavalry corps of 2 Skin Wolves with armor, including Maws of Savagery and the Norscan Ice Wolves. I should also note that one of the Berserkers is the Brutes of the Hound, who are, of course, unbreakable, and that makes them an even bigger pain in the rear to deal with. I guess they also do cause fear, but that's not exactly relevant in this match. Now, immediately here we can see that Luca is collapsing inward. We can see that the direwolves are charging in from the flank, and they're actually going to break up the bracing on these spearmen. And as you can see, the Blood Knights get a very meaty connection there, immediately drop these guys' HP by a solid 2,000 plus. And now as the Berserkers and the Wolves are throwing themselves into the fray, Luca does throw his direwolves right through and get them on top of the Javelins, trying to bog down the Berserkers here, bog down the Maws of Savagery, and just stall and let the Blood Knights do a little bit more work. And I think that's a pretty clever move. Right here, you can see the Black Knights have gotten massive amounts of value against the Icehorn Marauders. The Blood Knights have gotten massive amounts of value against the Spears. And yeah, these direwolves are probably screwed, but, you know, you've gotten a good chunk of damage there. In the meantime, on this flank, you can see the direwolves have thrown themselves into the fray, but immediately are getting collapsed upon by the Ice Wolves, by the Skin Wolves with armor, as well as the Brutes of the Hound. So these guys are not going to be long for this world. They're immediately trapped. They're being slowed down. They're going nowhere in life. But in come the Blood Knights, getting a very meaty charge. Keep in mind, Norscan Ice Wolves do have do count as large, so they are not going to hold up that well against Blood Knights, and they're going to get torn apart pretty bad. Immediately, Heart Piercing is going down, as is Helm of Discord, which is going to nuke these guys' stats very, very effectively, and they're going to be in a very bad spot. Meantime, Black Knights with Lance and Barding collapsing in from this flank. Unfortunately, the Blood Knights not having the best time of it, down to 33 models already, taking massive amounts of damage from the mixture of Maws of Savagery, from the Spears, as well as the Berserkers. And now, of course, we do have that hail of Javelin fire pouring in as well. Luca is a little slow here in getting his infantry into the fight as well. You can see the Skeleton Warriors just kind of sitting, loitering here, the zombies as well. These guys really need to be pushing into the fray, just trying to engage here. It doesn't matter what they're engaging, just the fact that they are bogging some units down, buying him time would be ideal, because right now his cavalry is fighting alone, and that is definitely a little bit of a misplay. Probably a slip of a micro, because there's so much going on all flanks, but something worth mentioning, I think. Now, you can see the Blood Knights here slugging it out with the Skin Wolves, definitely getting the better end of the engagement. Armored Skin Wolves don't have AP damage of their own, so they are going to struggle a little bit against the Blood Knights, but Throg is in there, beating the crap out of the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. Over here, the Terrorgeists did dive in, weirdly enough going into the infantry. I'm not sure if that was sort of an overshoot, trying to go after the Skin Wolves or what that was, but he's definitely, this isn't really where you want your Terrorgeist, but as we can see, the Skeletons are now pushing forward, bogging down this backline, and The Blood Dragon does manage to get off an Invocation of Neck, I do believe with a miscast, unfortunately, keeping these Blood Knights in the fray. On this flank, though, things are looking a lot less peachy. These Black Knights are getting torn apart. I do believe the Blood Knights are actually have been destroyed, so that unit Blood Knights is completely gone. And as we can see, the balance of power is shifting pretty decisively in Norsca's favor right now. Burning Head is about to go down and roast these troops. Now, Black Knights with Lance and Barding have broken the firing line, so these Marauder Hunters are gone. These I actually don't think will last much longer either, because they are getting compromised constantly, and we can see that the Black Knights with Lance and Barding here actually managed to tear out the spears with the help of the Terrorgeist. More like the Terrorgeist tear out them. And this is actually a big win here for Luca. So balance of power is not really in his favor, but he just managed to tear out a unit of the Maws of Savagery as well as the Marauder Spearmen, and potentially this is an ideal situation where he could remove these units from play completely. The Ice Wolves have actually fled to the periphery, but they are still around and kicking, which is definitely a little bit of a win. Marauder Hunters here stabilizing, and they are going to start probably lobbing javelins, though these Skeleton Warriors are pretty intent on not allowing them to do that. Rampaging Berserkers now, going out of control, going ham on these Blood Knights, and doing quite a lot of damage alongside the Giant, which is being buffed by the Cascading Firecloak, which is going to make it hit like an absolute truck, and is going to buff its melee defense, which is normally terrible, but now it's going to be able to hold against those Blood Knights much more effectively. And combined with the Javelins, it's actually doing a decent amount of damage here to the poor Blood Knights. Over here, you can see the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord is diving into the Fimir Balefiend, trying to shut this bugger down. Him and his ugly purple hand are not going to have a good day at all. And so he's just slashing him in his hump there, and really trying to put him down. But this guy's already up to 115 kills. That Burning Head has done a lot of work, and between the buffs he's been dropping as well as the Burning Heads, he's gotten a lot of value already. Over here, the Brutes of the Hound just chewing through an endless tide of Skeleton Warriors and Zombies. They will probably win this fight, because between Berserk as well as just how bad these units are and these guys' space stats, they will definitely do a lot of work there. But at the same time, it means they're not here in this main pocket, and that's leaving all the heavy lifting to more generic Norscan troops who are not having as good of a time of it. Now, I do think over here, unfortunately, Luca gets a little unlucky. He tried to chase the Maws of Savagery off with his Black Knights with Lance and Barding, but unfortunately they lost. They couldn't keep up, and so the Maws of Savagery rallied, turned around, and smote those guys down, just annihilated them, and now they're going to be regenning at 12 models, so they've got 2/3 of their strength. They've still got a ways to go before they hit their healing cap, and right now, these guys could very much recover and get back into the fray. At the same time, poor Terrorgeist here having a terrible time of it. Zombie Summon is saving his bacon, but, you know, he's crumbling. HP is being lost. Throg and the Giant are definitely trying to stay on top of him, trying to knock him out, and although he will be able to get away here, it's definitely not looking ideal. Blood Knights here on 14 models, so that is not good at all. Blood Dragon is, I believe, closing in on his healing cap. If we look here, he's got to be close. Yeah, oh no, maybe not. He's still got over 1,000 HP left to heal, but still, he's definitely not having the ideal time of it. And of course, Norsca is just cleaning up these troops. Black Knights here getting bogged down on the Giant and getting trashed. Now, granted, they will do some good damage to the Giant in turn. He's only got 31 melee defense and no armor, really. So they can do some good work there, but sustained combat, really not these guys' forte. Not good, especially with the Skin Wolves with armor in the fray. Elsewhere, you can see the Maws of Savagery rallying alongside the Spears, trying to come back in. Now, an Invocation of the Heck here did go down on the Blood Dragon as well as the Blood Knights. I think this was a misplay because I think Luca should have waited to get the Terrorgeist in the circle, maybe even get the Black Knights with Lance and Barding in there, because you could have gotten, in my opinion, a much beefier heal that way on more important units. But as it is, only the Blood Knights got the heal, which kind of sucks. It means that these Black Knights are probably going to be goners now, and the Terrorgeist is definitely not doing too great. That said, Maws of Savagery get sandwiched, pincered, and are getting torn to shreds. Their leadership is in the tank, and immediately Terror kicks in, and they are not going to last long now. They are completely crumbling. At 7 models, they just don't stand a chance. 6 models now, lost half their strength very, very quickly. Black Knight's definitely showing the value of that high charge bonus when attacking a unit like this. They just can get so much value, even against 70 armor, as long as they get that meaty charge off. That said, balance of power, while it is stabilizing or going more towards the center, is still a little difficult to gauge, because most of the Vampire Count Force right now is pretty beat up. I think most of it is being propped up really by the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, who is of course debuffing and trying to snipe out Throg here. We did see a Fireball whiff on the Terrorgeist, so a bit of good luck there for once. Or the Fireball, if it had hit Terrorgeist, that would have probably been a good 500 or so damage. Could have definitely weakened it going into this bigger fight here. All the infantry is just being thrown into the fray. A lot of these units are, I believe, summons, so they're just being thrown away into the grinder. The Blood Dragon is slaying out with Throg, doing a decent amount of damage. Heartbeater has unfortunately expired, so he's not going to be getting that bonus there, but still able to do a good amount of damage. Helm of Discord goes down as well. In comes the Terrorgeist and is getting some very beefy damage here. on these poor souls. And Throg routes, actually, so that is a huge win. Giant here getting rammed into by the Blood Knights. So I believe the Blood Knights are actually trying to sneak around and get on top of Throg as Throg routes out of the formation. And this is a huge win. This is part of the reason I think it's nice to have the Wintertooth Crown if you're playing as Norsca, just to keep your troops in the fray, or even keep Throg in the fray, because Throg right now still has 1100 HP. If he had gotten that self buff in there, he could probably still be around kicking. Instead, he's routed, Skinwolves have routed, and this is looking very, very grim, as the Blood Knights are going to pursue Throg here and probably shut him down. He's down to 1000 HP, and Blood Knights will keep up with a 56 speed unit pretty handily. Now, the Giant here is on 1400 HP, is getting breath attacked by the Terrorgeist. It just washes over the poor Giant. Does about 1000 damage, so some pretty insane work there. Giant, though, still sticks around. Leadership drop into -1. He's very much on the cusp of collapse here, but actually doesn't break. Sticks around on 300 some HP, and showing his mettle. Really showing that Giants just do not break with their 100 base leadership and fear and terror and all that. Luca does try to come in for the snipe, but both attacks whiff or get blocked. I'm not even sure how this happens, but both of them fail to connect with the Norscan Giant, who's now down to 268 HP. But Terrorgeist is forced to cut and run, as is the Blood Dragon Lord here, so they're trying to escape, squeak away for dear life. You can see a zombie summon going down, so definitely a bit of an unfortunate circumstance there, that the fact that the Giant got away. Cascading Fire Cloak goes down. I think this was a bit of a waste. Really should have held off on this until there was another attempt to charge him. Perhaps Grumpy was trying to get a additional meteor attack here on the Terrorgeist, but it just didn't happen, so that was a little unfortunate for him. Skeleton Warriors here diving into the Marauders. Marauders raged up, will trade really well into trash, so it's going to be a bad day. And we can see on the periphery, Skinwolves' armor are actually rallying. Now, these guys will not win, as are the Models of Savagery, in fact, on 4 models, so this could be a problem. Now, these guys are nothing special. They've only got, at 10 models, they do still have a decent amount of not Winds of Magic, of HP to heal. But their bonus is large while useful. They don't have much AP, so potentially not the greatest. The thing is that at this point, Luca's just really down to the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord with good armor. Everything else here is pretty depleted. Fimir Belfiend does get caught. Balance of Power is now shifting pretty decisively in the Count's favor. We can see the poor Fimir Belfiend get sniped. Unfortunately, I actually missed the Giant going down. He toppled over here, so huge misplay on my part there, just not paying attention. But he's a goner. Zombies are not going to last long in this world. They're getting shredded by the Brutes of the Hound, who are just having an absolute field day there. And we can see the Blood Dragon now diving in alongside the Blood Knights and demolishing those Skinwolves. So using this Cav Force to knock out these attempted reinforcements one by one. So definitely a big win there. Balance of Power shifting decisively in the Vampire Count's favor. The Brutes of the Hound there actually do start rampaging again, I believe. So kind of sucks. And we actually do see that the Norscan army completely shatters. Now, at this point, I think you might as well let the Brutes of the Hound fight it out. Might as well try, see how much damage they can do. You can see they're tearing up with the Blood Knights, but it does look like Grumpy Guard decides to concede. Honestly, I think, like, if you play by tournament rules where you can't cycle charge or can't cycle charge much, they might have actually still been able to do quite a bit of damage there. Probably would have killed the Blood Knights, though Blood Knights certainly are ideal for killing them with a good chunk of their models left. The Brutes of the Hound, they had like 40 models, I think, at the end. Could have probably still done some work. They're probably not won, I think, with the Blood Dragon as well as the Terrorgeist in the mix. Still, a very, very close match. Very well played to both players. I think relatively original builds as well. Perhaps this is just me. I don't necessarily play that much Vampire Counts or Norsca nowadays, so it might just be my detachment from the scene, but I feel like you don't see Skinwolves in this fight very often. More heavy Marauder focus is something that I think is kind of cool. Because usually what I see is in this match, I feel, is more elite Norscan builds, where you'll see sort of a death ball strategy with mammoths and that sort of thing. So a strategy without mammoths, obviously the Giant in there as a stable anchor, but ditching the mammoths, bringing out the Skinwolves, a really cool strat in my opinion. Norscan Ice Wolves, I really do think that the Wintertooth Crown could have been a huge saving grace here. Could have potentially prevented some of those early routes. Because some of those early routes really hurt Grumpy Guard, I think, because he was actually getting some massive value against a lot of Triari's Cav, or against Luca's Cav, but then he'd get terror-routed by the Terrorgeist or something, and that would be very, very painful. So Norscan Ice Wolves, for example, routed you to that. And if they'd gotten some buffs from Throg that way, they would have stuck around. And the same thing for the Vampire Counts. This is a build you don't necessarily see all that often, I think. Obviously, Chaff Heavy is perfectly viable, but going with Black Knights with Lance and Barding, definitely a very high micro strategy. We saw that in some places it ended up being resulting in some slip-ups, like the Skeletons engaging a little late, the Zombies engaging a little late. At the same time, it meant that Luca had a huge amount of hitting power. He was really able to crush a lot of that cheaper Norscan infantry. So 104 kills in these Black Knights, as well as a Chevron gained, is pretty insane. And as long as you nail those charges, they can actually do a lot of damage to units like Skin Wolves. They can do a lot of damage to units like Norscan Giants, that sort of thing. I think the Dire Wolves perhaps were a little bit mismanaged. I think they could have. I think it felt like their sacrifice was a little pointless early on. They kind of just got thrown away and died. I understand that is how these units tend to pan out in games. I personally don't get that much success with them either, but I felt that perhaps a little more caution with them could have been better. Just my 2 cents there. Stellar play with the Terror Guys, actually, and it didn't seem like the Terror Guys had any massive plays, but it was always, or almost always, in a good spot to drop Terror Bombs. It got some very solid breath attacks that melted the Giants' HP down. It got a lot of sort of nibbling damage in over time, helping terror out a lot of these high-value targets, like the Skin Wolves, helping snipe out Throg, or the Giant, or the Fimir Balefeed. It was where it needed to be, and so it was really good play. Just not necessarily the flashiest play, but honestly, I didn't really give it that much credit in the match itself. But in hindsight, you can see 3 chevrons, or actually, I think it started with 1 chevron. Still, 2 chevrons gained on such a high value unit. 24 models killed, just pretty bonkers. 24 models obviously not that impressive, but given that most of it was probably Skin Wolves and perhaps some damage on the Giant and that sort of thing, it just did really, really well. So all in all, well played. I do think there were a few small slip-ups on both sides. Obviously, it was a pretty high micro game. There was a lot for the Norscan player to do, trying to protect his Marauder Hunters, trying to flex around to counteract 6 mobile units plus, or sorry, 7 mobile units. Plus, I guess I should even say 8, because there was Blood Dragon there. So 8 mobile units plus summons is obviously no easy task. It is very easy to get overwhelmed in that situation. And yet, Grumpy Guard handled it rather well. Just barely lost there in the long run, and it really was a very long and drawn out grindy game, without just being a mosh pit of 2 blobs, which it was still a very drawn out game. Actually, one other little commentary, I think, and this might just be me, but I will say, I think it can be worthwhile to drop the Marauder Hunters with Javelins in exchange for Marauder Horsemen. I think they're easier to protect against vampire counts. Like, once you remove the Dire Wolves, there basically isn't anything here that can really threaten Marauder Horsemen. And that's the same for the majority of Vampire count builds, really. You're not going to see too many mobile units, especially against a faction like Norsca, which doesn't have the strongest ranged play. This isn't Dwarves or Empire or Wood Elves we're talking about. This is Norsca. So realistically, you're not going to see too many Bats or Dire Wolves or whatever. And I think it might be better to bring in the Marauder Horsemen instead of Marauder Hunters, even though you lose that massive bonus versus large. The easier survivability is, I think, is valuable. But that's just my 2 cents there. Really well played to both players. Really exciting and fun match. As I mentioned before, guys, if you would like to see your own replays casted, if you would like me to give some commentary or some reviews, as always, feel free to send those over to me at wyverngamingreplays@gmail.com. Huge shout out to Luca for the replay. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you had a wonderful new year. And I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.